but I do still believe it should be a reasonable matchup here for Alutemu. And who knows, maybe an MVP could be Archdruid Naralex in his Rush Warrior, which, if it gives you Ysera Awakens, can just be absolutely absurd and win you the matchup on its own. But I think the more standard course of action is to go for tempo. Play out your cards and be as efficient as possible with your mana, as Alutemu's hand kind of does here. This is looking pretty premium.
It does. Parade Leader and Crab Rider together is very difficult for Token Druid to deal with in the early game. I'm just kind of trying to figure out where the Athletic Studies and Tent Trasher factor in this curve, because you kind of want to start coin Parade Leader into Crab Rider. So the Tent Trasher would cost 4, at which point, whether or not you Athletic Studies, you can play the Tent Trasher next turn, assuming the Crab Rider sticks. So, like, ideally, if Alutemu could pick up a Gnarg instead of the Studies, then this hand would be perfect. But that's not, like, a very common outcome. So he's just going to keep the Studies and try to find something faster than the Tent Trasher.
Yeah, I do like that he's keeping the Athletic Studies, because I would actually rather find... There's a lot of Rush minions I would rather play than Crab Rider, because the fact that it doesn't keep Wind Fury, only gets it on the turn you play it, is a big difference. You kind of want to save that to kill off 2 minions on the same turn. And so here, as we're looking at with the curve of Parade Leader into Rakara plus the Athletic Studies, then the Crab Rider, is looking like a very potent start to the game for Alutemu.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. The Crab Rider has utility once he's seen Gibberlings or Glowfly Swarm. But if you have double Crab Rider and Rakara, I'd be also just very tempted to get one of these down, even if it's not immediately trading into anything. The only question is, what's the order to go about this? Because it could be Crab Rider right now with the Parade Leader, because he can still play Rakara next turn. I think it's strong.
Oh, that's true. That is true. I mean, I was looking at just going for a little bit of a slower line here, but again, you always have to remember this is just a 2-mana 3/4. It's a Totem Golem without the overload, that maybe I was not giving it the credit it deserves. And then if you play Rakara next turn, your board is a lot less susceptible to the Lunar Eclipse as well. So you know what? I'm fully on board. I think I was overvaluing the effect of the Battle Cry of Crab Rider.
As for Shaxy, he hasn't hit the card draw. He solo kept Glowfly Swarm, which is, of course, very reasonable, but not even a Lunar Eclipse. It feels like he's going to get run over real quickly.
He is going to do nothing, and then he is going to die, is how I see this game currently going for Shaxy. This is pretty disastrous. Like, if he hits Fungal Fortunes and can go for... I don't know, Glowfly and Pride's Fury on the same turn, if he picks up a couple of Lightning Blooms, then we can talk. But short of that, Alutemu is just going to take value trades every single turn, and then he's going to pull way more ahead on board, because he's never running out of stuff to do with this hand. And I don't think Shaxy can keep up with that.
Completely agree. Alutemu did have like a slight conundrum as to whether he played Rakara or just Crab Rider Studies, and then, you know, he could push more damage immediately because that Crab Rider could sweep up both taunts on its own, and then they have the Rakara later on. But I think that does leave him a little bit weaker to Lunar Eclipse, so I like that he gets the Rakara down right now, which means like you're not pushing as much immediate face damage, but you're starting the buffs quicker, which I think is more relevant. He also has the Naralex now, which is, you know, able to give him, if not Awakens, just like Dream, Nightmare. Those are tempo cards, and that's the situation Alutemu is in, because you're right, Shaxy is doing nothing. It's just another Sentries.
That's right, and I think one of the things I'm realizing with Naralex is, despite that the fact that it is a dormant card, it functions very differently to other dormant cards, where you kind of have to play them as soon as possible for them to get any value. Naralex, you can kind of still play it whenever, and it's okay, just to get one spell for the next turn. And so, as you said, Rakara, immediate tempo, way more important. Shaxy passing again because he thinks that Glowfly Swarm is his only real way back into the game, and it is just getting further and further away from any kind of a reality that he can pull this one back. Like, double Crab Rider on this turn would be insane. Naralex instead, sure. Like, it's just way too powerful from Alutemu.
How does Alutemu lose if he just goes for double Crab Rider here? I don't even see the point in Naralex, right? Because he's just threatening so much damage. Shaxy cannot clear more than 1 minion next turn. Everything has greater than 3 health, so he would need 2 Lunar Eclipses. Yeah, I think this is the best way to go about it.
Yeah, it's 100% Crab Riders. You threaten well over lethal. I don't think there's any single card that can save him, because not even Lunar Eclipse does anything. That was the most nothing game of Hearthstone I've ever seen. Alutemu could have literally just walked up, sat down at his PC, and had the same amount of success. Shaxy's Druid did nothing.
Yeah, he didn't hit any card draw or ramp. And it goes to show that even though Glowfly is like in a vacuum, turn 5 full board of 2/2 sounds really powerful. Maybe not in this meta. There's just decks that kill you before then. Needs to be turn 4 or earlier. And even if he got the Glowfly down on turn 4, I don't think Alutemu was going to bat an eyelash because he had double Crab Riders, which could clear off 4 minions immediately. And the Rakara stuck around.
Very, very one-sided indeed. Means that Alutemu is left now with his Rogue and his Demon Hunter, I believe, given that the Priest was banned away. And that sounds to me like 2 pretty good matchups against the against the Token Druid. We just got a message from Lorinda saying that Rogue is, I believe, in Grandmasters at a 65% win rate against Druid over a pretty decent sample size for a tournament that plays relatively few games compared to Ladder, which is absurd. That's an incredible win percentage to have as Rogue against Druid. So that's another great matchup. Demon Hunter, again, we can argue, but if anything, I think Alutemu's got himself a great list to play against Token Druid because we've seen consistently that the double Throglaive is actually really powerful as an extra clear tool against the Token Druids.
That is true. I'd still struggle to call it favored for OTK Demon Hunter because they do have to hit either those double Throglaives or at least 1 Immolation Aura in the time that the Druid can build 2 to 3 boards. And while the Demon Hunter can get very strong draw, the problem is that it's kind of the timing of their draw, the Skull in particular, is kind of conflicting with when the Glowflies come down and get buffed. And so it has to be a little bit faster on average for the Demon Hunter to actually keep up. I do think that the second Throglaive tech will help Alutemu quite a bit though, because the time he did win this matchup, it was a very scrappy control game plan for 90% of the game, and then only towards the end did he start looking for Il'gynoth to finally close things out.
Well, here we go. The Alutemu Miracle Rogue coming up here. Shaxy, I suppose we should talk about the Miracle Rogue. It's standard. There's not really anything else going on. We've seen it a million times already at this point. For Shaxy on the Warrior, though, is where things get a little bit more interesting because it's always exciting to see how the different builds of Control Warrior are factored in. Shaxy's, however, is kind of also no new cards going on with his Control Warrior. He's basically just stolen the list that Alutemu and his Japanese practice partners created a few weeks ago. He has admittedly teched it a little bit. He's got Magtheridon in there, but the core of it with Double Troublemaker Rattlecore and Shadowhunter Vol'jin is still there. At the time, we very much praised this build of Warrior. It felt like a good build that has game against both OTK Demon Hunter and the aggro decks. But I feel like nowadays, when we have the buff to N'Zoth, obviously the new cards of Kresh and Mutinous, it honestly feels a little bit outdated in terms of a build of Control Warrior.
Kind of does. I'm also just kind of curious as to why Magtheridon made it into this list because it feels like a little bit counterintuitive with the Vol'jin in there, because you don't want to pull out the Magtheridon with Vol'jin because I'm pretty sure the Magtheridon just never wakes up at that point because you don't get its battle cry. It just stays dormant forever. And so it does have a little bit of a failure rate with this list, but I still think the overall core of the deck is quite strong against Rogue, right? Just having all of that removal, the Outrider's Axe, ever important, and just making sure that the Rogue cannot get any of their chip damage through. By the time they get their Alex combo, you will have that Bulwark to lock out any chance of them winning the game.
Quite right. Yeah, I still think just a pretty disastrous matchup for Alutemu. The core package as well of the Rush minion of Kargath, Bladefist, and Stage Dive is still something that I think is not talked about enough. I think it's just a very, very clever inclusion. You don't often see 1-on-1 in terms of tutor cards and the cards you want to tutor out. Usually you would see like 2 Rush minions and 1 Stage Dive. But just the fact that you can kill off the Kargath and then pull out Kargath Prime with the same Stage Dive, I think is, again, we've seen it all, but just worth mentioning that it's a very powerful effect, especially against Rogue when armor is so important.
Definitely does. In terms of what else the build could have in store for the Rogue matchup, I kind of think that the Magtheridon played out just normally has quite a bit of game, right? Because Rogue already struggles with dealing with individual big minions. Like, they have their 2 prize plunderers, but outside of a discovered Kazakus Golem for poison and shoot, I don't think they're dealing with a 12-12. So if Shaxy ever gets a turn where he has the 7 mana to go for Bladestorm with the Magtheridon and say Alutemu has the board space, then it could be really huge. But Shaxy's pretty much just not allowed to play Magtheridon if he's not immediately killing off the 1-3s, because at any point Alutemu can step those tokens and permanently keep the Magtheridon asleep.
So for Shaxy here on the mulligan, he only kept Rancor, but the card I was actually most interested in, not necessarily in keeping, but just talking about, was the Stage Dive. Because even though playing it uncorrupted is not quite so powerful, specifically against Rogue, just guaranteeing yourself a 4-4 rush is pretty good against a potential Octobot that they could just throw down on turn 2.
We're thinking about, but Shaxy also has these double Scorpits, which nicely challenge an Octobot, so I think it's perfectly fine. Alutemu, because of the threat of Scorpit, you have to imagine, is not playing Octobot on turn 2, wants to guarantee the discount a little bit later, proccing it by himself, goes with the Mancrick, and as it happens, the Scorpit is still pretty good in this situation.
Bit of a weird selection. Commencement, given that there's double Troublemaker in the deck, is interesting. I mean, there's not that many minions in the deck, so the chances of hitting it are actually not absurd. And if you miss, you can hit Shield Mage or Vol'jin, which is not terrible. And given that the other two have essentially 0 utility until much later on in the matchup, I do like the Commencement.
I agree. Just by process of elimination. I don't necessarily think Shaxy will have the time to play it in the near future, but he just doesn't have taunt minions, so yeah.
Why did he point out the armor vendor here, though?
Maybe because he's committing to Outrider's Axe and then just wants to have the minion in play because he curves into Shield Maiden. It does feel like a curious timing for sure.
I'm looking for a few
plays around Field Contact Guardian Org Merchant is the best I can come up with, and then you finish off with the Outrider's Axe. But like, when you've just picked up Commencement, when you have Rattlegore in hand, like, Coin is really good. You don't have to just use that here, especially when your armor is going to get eroded before you've drawn the Shield Slams.
I don't personally mind it because I think it encourages the Mancrick to take a value trade, and then he can kill something with the Outrider's Axe. And his curve is still mostly intact with the Shield Maiden for the next turn. It could have been that the Mancrick goes into the 1-3, but then against a potential Kazakus, he would still have something to kill off. It just felt like a bit of a weird timing for sure, though.
Yeah, I guess being able to clear off the Mancrick with 1 damage, as you said, is nice. But either way, doesn't get too much value here in this instance with the payoff of Kazakus. He couldn't necessarily have had a strong read on that card being Kazakus. It could have just been, you know, a Field Contact, for example, or an Octobot that he didn't want to play out too aggressively. But it does mean that his curve is slowed down somewhat here for Shaxy.
Alutemu did take +2/+2 on minions, so that golem is not coming down this turn. The Octobot feels like it's in a decent spot to maybe get the proc through because there is a low attack minion on Shaxy's side. The Outrider's Axe is only 3 attack. Or Alutemu could proc it himself this turn, but nothing in this hand particularly looks like it needs a discount because Jandice can come down next turn either way. I'd be kind of interested in holding onto the Octobot for Tenwu Alex value later on.
Yeah, it's the kind of hand that's good if you know that Field Contact is going to be in the next couple of cards, because otherwise, as you say, you do kind of want to hold on to it for the full burst combo. But I don't know, even then, it's worth talking about what is the overall macro game plan here. Like, are you trying to go for the full burst combo, or would you rather use all your tempo tools, like the Shadow Steps, Tenwu, discounts from Octobot, on just having the most impressive mid-game possible and hoping that you can get there through minion damage?
I think the game plan really varies on how the early game pan out happens, and I think having the Octobot discounts open for later leaves Alutemu with the most options, so I don't mind that he's just going for the draw with the Cult Neophyte, even though it's not really making any particular spells awkward for Shaxy to play. Shaxy has pulled it ahead now with the Shield Maiden, and Alutemu has, like, not the greatest golem, but this could be a Field Contact turn.
Well, of course it's not greatest, it's greater. It's in the name.
Yeah. There is no greatest golem. It's called superior at 10 cost, right?
No, it's great less, greater, greatest. That's just how it is.
Great less, but not great more?
Well, that's the one. It's or maybe it's just great, greater, greatest would make sense. English.
Good, better, best. Yeah. Okay, what about just Jandice this turn?
I mean, that's obviously what you're looking at the first port of call. The question is just, can you get away with a field contact turn, though? Because using the Brain Freeze on the on the Shield Maiden is definitely worth a lot just to try and protect your board, because otherwise Jandice is, it's just getting chewed through.
It is, but it's kind of creating a board state where Bladestorm is a bit more difficult for Shaxy to maneuver because he has his own Shield Maiden, whereas the field contact turn might have made Bladestorm super easy for Shaxy. This Jandice is super interesting, though, because these minions both don't want to have an illusion on them. I think I would have ended up putting the illusion on the 3-5, though, because Moonfang seems very, very powerful.
Agreed. If they don't have the Blade Storm or some other repeated damage effects like Minefield, it could get a little bit awkward. But then again, there's still Coerce, there's Lord Barov, there's just so many ways to make sure that you are getting through this very easily.
But as for Shaxy, going about this test is very difficult, right? Because this 1-3, where it goes matters a lot. I think he tests into Moonfang either way, because if the illusion is not on the 3-5 and you test into that, then it's kind of a disaster because the Moonfang then has like actually 3 health because of the buff. So I think he 1-3 into Moonfang and then decide.
It still dies after it takes 1 hit, right?
Oh,
Even
really?
if it gets buffed. Yeah, the illusion says as soon as it takes damage, it dies, right? Not it has 1 health.
My bad. Okay, well, Moonfang was the illusion minion. Shaxy gets through it with the Rancor. He instead tested into the Barons first, and it wasn't even a test because he one-shotted it, but he was just kind of saying, here, this is a guaranteed clear. I'm not going to bother with any chance of failure.
Yeah, it did lead to him being a little bit less ahead on board than he could have been. Like, if he'd just gone start with bump into the Moonfang and then go for Rancor swing, he could have kept a 5-3 on the board.
Yeah, that is huge for sure. I'm trying to figure out what was the worst case scenario. Then if the Moonfang immediately died, then he could still have traded into the 5. Yeah. So not ideal from Shaxy there. But for Alutemu, this is a situation where he can get like a decent buff from the Greater Golem. Like a buffed up Octobot is not the easiest thing for Shaxy to kill in one fell swoop, even though he's not pushing immediate damage.
Wow, just goes with the secret passage. I mean, you have to remember there's not many individually good cards that he can hit anymore. Jandice played, Kazakus played, Mankrik played. It's all combos of cards. And it looks to me like whatever he was looking for, he didn't find it.
Yeah, I'm not even sure what he was looking for. Like Swindles maybe, but then his hand was already pretty full to begin with. Like, I really didn't mind the just Octobot and buff the board play, but Alutemu is maybe thinking he'd rather save the buffs or when it can push immediate damage, because all of that chip is very, very relevant against Shaxy.
Looks like there might be a slight disconnect here, which will get sorted out as soon as possible. Every other time this has happened, it has been immediately remedied. And hopefully we can jump back in, because Shaxy was there with a bit of a weird turn. You know, he had the commencement in hand, which you could go for to try and high roll the Troublemaker, which would be not an auto win, but, you know, a very, very good position. But I think given that this is the turn with Mankrik enraged on the other side, you probably just take a turn clearing the board first and then try and go for your own development.
I agree. But the best way to clear this board is, you know, debatable, because this feels like a bit of a wasted Barov, for example, because he's really only putting 1 minion to 1 health, and then the Bladestorm is awkward because it would only kill the Guardian Og Merchant at this point.
And so are you looking at Kargath Bulwark? You could just equip the Bulwark at this point. Like, you don't have to wait until the end to go Bulwark. Or Kargath Scorpid.
You don't, but I mean, the Bulwark, you don't have to wait, but I think if Shaxy can help it, he would really want to save the Bulwark. So I don't hate the Kargath Scorpid type game plan, and then evaluate from there what the next board will be. Potentially even Outrider's Axe with Scorpid, take the pain for a turn, and then try to hit Brawl by that point. Shaxy's undecided till the end, though.
Mate, he was winding up for that commencement. And again, obviously, you can't blame him because the rope is burning out. Whatever he's going to do, he needs to do it right the heck now. But again, you know, if it had been the Troublemaker, he would have been in such a strong position. But just taking a kind of weird halfway clear where Barov is used, but it doesn't get an especially high amount of value quite yet.
It doesn't, but it's pretty strong on board, right? Because the Barrow of Death Rattle is pretty problematic still for Alutemu. And I think Shaxy is most importantly gearing up for the Magtheridon Bladestorm game plan, which works only if Alutemu doesn't put any minions lower than 3 health on the board. So trying to incentivize Alutemu trading off this board and then proccing the Barrow and then redeveloping things with higher health, by which point the Magtheridon is super strong. Oh, but then the self-proccing Octobot is pretty cool here. Yeah,
he gets a very cool play by just brain freezing the Barov, getting the clear board, pushing a fair bit of damage as well, you know, whilst proccing the Octobot. It's very cute.
Yeah. You could say he didn't have to brain freeze and could have traded the Divine Shield instead, but that's -5 damage to the face, which I think you would trade a brain freeze for 5 damage, even with the field contact in hand, because he still has that Aug Merchant. So definitely very big for Shaxy here, for Alutemu here. And the worst part for Shaxy is this Aug Merchant is on 2 health, so Magtheridon Bladestorm doesn't work.
That's right, without the Orc Merge, this would be a very, very easy turn to just sweep up the board and get your 12-12 in play. But it was actually looking a bit rough until he found this Brawl. I think now he can quite happily go Brawl and then potentially even Bladestorm if one of the higher attack minions survive.
Yeah, might even be the Bulwark because he's under just that much pressure from the start.
Oh.
Okay, but if it's Octobot, I think he's fine to go Scorpid here. In terms of leaving up minions on board, he's already seen the Golem, right? And so it's really tough for Alutemu to buff what's already on the board. Shaxy is now just scared of things like Wicked Stab from hand. And I don't think he's scared of board redevelopment because he has that Magtheridon Bladestorm combo, but I guess it's still not guaranteed, right? Because Alutemu can play these lower health minions once again.
Okay, Prize Plunderer could come down just on the Divine Shield. I mean, again, this is the point you were talking about where the Octobot is really wanting to be saved for the Alex Tenwu kind of hands. And so even though Octobot and then shoot it with your Prize Plunderer is available on this turn, I just don't think it does enough. And so you need to start targeting your own minions, as annoying as that is.
It's super awkward. Like, the Octobot on this turn would have discounted a grand total of 1 card, a Pexus Blast, but now Alutemu's hit field contact, so is he meant to like step his Prize Plunderer with the field contact and draw 2 more cards that way?
I think so, right?
He gets rid of his own shield, I guess.
Wow, he just stops. Okay.
Fair enough. Just hoping for something better off of the field contact next turn. Doesn't want to hurt his own board any more than he already has.
Admittedly now for Shaxy though, he's tanked a lot more damage at this point in the game than you usually would. Like being at 12 is actually a little scary. As long as Alutemu does not completely brick on the draws, you know, he doesn't have an easy clear that doesn't involve tanking the minion here first.
It's just so awkward that he's never hit Minefield this entire time. And that's the kind of card you need to have for this shape of board that Rogue often puts forward either in the early turns or, as it happens, in the late turns because Alutemu himself had a very awkward hand. The Brawl could have been held on to for Magtheridon potentially, but in the case where a 1-3 survives, that's super disaster for Shaxy because Alutemu could then step the 1-3.
It's true.
Not sure. Maybe it's time to go digging with the Scorpid, and if you miss, just equip Bulwark.
Oh, Bulwark here is so bad. Oh, I hate
it. Could be like, it could be Outriders with the Scorpion and then just Vendor to stay safe, but Shaxy's going for maximum defensive play, clearing everything, loses 2 charges on the Bulwark because of this, and now Alutemu will really be hoping to hit that Alex combo soon, but it involves good top decks to go with this field contact. Based on his expression, that's like the worst outcome.
Completely misses on any kind of value. Alutemu just has to pass now. He had so many draws. Like a single Battle Cry or combo card, and he can just replay it over and over again, draw the rest of his deck. This is the one disaster now.
Yeah, I guess Alex is the only other bad card to draw from your, or Tenmu itself, but everything else either keeps the combo going or it's Secret Passage, and it's just strong. But now there is the commencement from Shaxy. Wow, I was thinking that was Rattlegore, but he's going for the high rolls, and he gets a very high roll indeed.
Kargath Prime is disgusting. I think as close as Alutemu was to getting there, it's just that one turn too late. Like, he can freeze it with one of the Brain Freezes left in his deck, but it's not going anywhere, and I think unless you kill that off, are you really going to be getting through it?
Oh no, this is a terrible one, Thief. I was thinking he can just ignore it for a couple turns, but yeah, you're right. He has to get through it at some point because it's protecting this last charge on the Bulwark, which in turn protects Shaxy from Alexstrasza and Wicked Stab damage. So Alutemu, wait, he picked up Brain Freeze with the Shattering, so that's a clear. Whoa, disaster averted. New card strong. Yeah, this just has to be a shatter turn, right? And then he can take off that last charge of the weapon with his dagger.
There's no way that you can get a Octobot discount here, or if you try and step anything else first, but I agree. I think it does have to be shattering.
Blast, that's the second part of the card. Yeah, we don't know the card names just yet. And they're not showing up on the deck tracker, the new cards, unfortunately. It's a bit painful to have to leave up the Scorpid, but it's alright. Like, Alutemu's main game plan is just burning the face now, and he's seen the Bulwark. Shaxy did discover this War Cache, which if it pulls another Bulwark could be bad news. But outside of that, I think Alutemu's in a strong position.
He is in a strong position, yeah. That Mask of Cthulhu is huge. I mean, obviously, again, even if Bulwark is found, because of that Mask of Cthulhu, he should be able to relatively easily chew through it. And so therefore, is this just not a War Cache turn? Like, you could go Outrider's Axe instead, and I don't know, like, if you trade in enough minions, you can just clear off with Minefield instead as well.
Yeah, well, even without the Minefield, he can already kill like 2 minions with Outriders and a trade and just leave up a 1-2. I think that was kind of fine. He picks up Reaper's Scythe now if he wants to clear that way. But I think Shaxy should be way more interested in gaining armor, right? Which I think also feeds into why he played War Cache, looking for something like Rancor, even Sword and Board, but not available here. So he's going to take as little damage as possible, weave in the hero powers, but this is the window Alutemu has been waiting for. Just missing a Tenwu now to really get the damage rolling.
Yeah, Secret Passage not really doing it here. I believe the final cards in his deck we can show you being... I think that one of these Wicked Stabs is incorrectly shown. Prize Plunderer, Swindle, Tenwu, Vanessa, and 1 stab. You know, it's still a fair bit of damage. The extra Wicked Stab and the Tenwu are a big deal, but it does mean that just going for Secret Passage here is a bit weird. I don't even know if it's worth it. Like, you could just do it and then play the Wicked Stab, I guess. But you can't really do anything with the Tenwu. I guess it would just be the thin cards from your hand.
Yeah, I think the Passage's main like purpose is to get Tenwu in the natural hand one way or another. Either through Swindle or just playing cards that aren't Tenwu, so it's more likely to top deck it. Okay.
Oh, wow.
Swindle does get the Tenwu then.
Perfect.
It's not discounted though, and the Alex is also not discounted, so Alutemu still has to take like 1 more turn. And I thought he would save the Prize Plunder to proc the Octobot, but might not even be necessary here, right? Because he can straight up play Alexstrasza, then step it, and then go Alex Tenwu the next turn.
Exactly. And I think that's going to be the game plan. I don't know if realistically Shaxy can stand up against all of that. He can gain a little bit of armor, clear the board here, of course. But it's still just so much burn left for Alutemu.
Yeah, I don't think it's getting there. I don't see a way he gains more than 4 armor from the Rancor either. And so, like, he would even have to face tank the Vanessa to fully clear, which is the same as a hero power, so you might as well even just coerce to get rid of the minion. Oh, it feels terrible because there's also just Alex on board to have to think about next turn. Looks like he's going to go digging with the Outriders and probably end on the Rancor.
Oh, I can't even fit in the hero power though because the Cult Neophyte. It's these small differences that end up making all the difference in the world. No mana to hit lethal quite yet for Alutemu, but make no... Oh no, wait, there is with just Mask of Cthulhu plus Wicked Stab. It doesn't even have to go for the Alexstrasza. And with the Miracle Rogue against the Control Warrior, what is essentially the warrior of his own creation with... Magtheridon slotted in there instead because reasons. Alutemu getting the win in an unprecedented fashion. The Rogue is not meant to win that matchup, and him doing so puts him in a phenomenal position for the rest of the series.
Yeah, that's insane. I felt like the Rogue might be the weak point in the lineup for Alutemu up against what Shaxy has delivered. Although, looking at our stats throughout GM, it looks like Rogue has been, you know, consistently well-performing, not just against Token Druid, but also like pretty decent against OTK Demon Hunter, so not the worst in the world. However, the fact that this warrior took a loss in what's supposed to be a very favorable matchup is unprecedented. I feel like Control Warrior is so popular because it's very consistent in what you expect it to do. As it happens, though, the lack of Minefield in the very key turns where Shaxy was kind of forced on using big removal pieces for just a couple weenie minions made all the difference.
I mean, it was just a weird game. Like, admittedly, Shaxy did not get the best hand ever, but he didn't get the worst one either. Like, he had plenty of removal. He found double Rancor before the end of the game. He had the Outrider's Axe. Obviously, the Rattlegore is a bad card throughout there, but all the cards that were bad are cards that other players have cut, to be fair. Like, yes, they weren't good in this matchup, but Rattlegore has essentially disappeared from Control Warriors thanks to N'Zoth and Cthulhu. The Magtheridon is very rarely seen anymore, and it was looking very, very awkward there against Rogue, with there being no way to, or limited ways to consistently kill all of the Acolytes on the same turn. It just felt like Shaxy was struggling as a result of a clunky build of Control Warrior.
Yeah, not to mention the card he cut for one, Magtheridon, is a copy of Brawl, which I have felt double Brawl has been core in Control Warrior ever since Naviute invented it many, many years ago. Gorehal not in there anymore, though. Those days have long passed. But maybe the sidekick can pull your Gorehal. I think Boston mentioned to me that he was like experimenting with some stupid builds like that while the tournament realm was up for the GMs. But we have arrived at playoffs, of course, and there are no entirely new archetypes, at least in APAC. Shaxy's going to move on to this OTK Demon Hunter now, where he does have, once again, his signature 1 Spectral Sight, 1 Acrobatics, which is giving me OCD.
Yeah, I know, it's the weird awkward point, and Shaxy does this all the time. He is a one-of gamer. He has no qualms whatsoever with not having 2 of the better card, and you know, to his credit, with specifically Spectral Sight and Acrobatics, there is still a clear divide in terms of the players. Even within the Japanese players, Alutemu is playing 2 Spectral Sights. Both Glory and Possessi are instead favoring the 2 Acrobatics. So even amongst friends and practice partners, there's still a divide in terms of opinion. But have some conviction, you know, pick one or the other. One of them, it has to be better, right? In your opinion. And
even if you choose the worst card, die on your hill with dignity.
Yeah, exactly. If you're wrong, at least you believed in something. You got to be the Hamilton instead of Burr. Shaxy is being here. He's not standing for anything. I won't tell you what happens at the end, but it doesn't end well for Alutemu.
Well, Alutemu has picked up a pretty good opener, though, outside of like straight up Skull. He's got double studies and Spectral Sight in outcast position. In the mirror, we have seen him put Stelina to some very, very good use, but it's probably way too early for that. Or not.
Wow. Alutemu is such a Star Student Stalina gamer. We've seen it multiple times where he just goes for the disruption route. And it can be good. If you can't hit card draw, it's the next best thing against Demon Hunter, where it's the one way to disrupt the solitaire gameplay that we've seen time and again.
I guess I need to reword what I said about it being early, because obviously Stalina's good towards the late game if you know they're lacking just Il'gynoth by this point, which a lot of the times it feels like in OTK Demon Hunter mirrors, it comes down to Il'gynoth and bottom 5, both players. But you can also play Stalina going into an expected skull turn from your opponent, and if you snipe the skull, put it back in the deck, you pull so far ahead. The only awkwardness for Alutemu is how does he actually get Stalina in outcast position, because this IB might not have a target.
Right, and also how do you deal with the discount off of Illidari studies? Because if you go, as you were saying, Illidari studies here into I-Beam, that chews up the discount, Star Student Stalina gets in the way. But I guess Alutemu just coming to the conclusion, discounts are nice, but guaranteeing a skull in the outcast position is oh so much nicer. And so even if next turn he has to go Arcanist and then I-Beam his own Arcanist, absolutely fine. As long as he's able to get these skulls in position, that's a fine play.
Yeah, it does mean that the skulls come down turn 6, and Alutemu will end up with a bit of an awkward turn 5. Even if it's just Immolation Aura on a nothing board, that's okay though. The important thing is that he would play the Stalina going into Shaxy's own coin skull potential turn. So whether the Stalina is this upcoming turn for Alutemu or next, I think it's reasonable, because Shaxy himself has not played any Illidari studies.
Wow, but Alutemu getting the information that coin is being used early essentially gives him the information that skull is either not in hand or just not in the outcast position. But still, absolutely, I think does have to go for the Stalina anyway, just to make room for the skull.
Also challenges the Fell Screamer a little bit cleaner. This decision is very strange though, because these are all like cards Shaxy didn't want to have in the first place, but Stalina is still a net benefit by diluting Shaxy's deck a little bit further. I guess I-Beam, because that's like a easy answer to Stalina herself.
Sure, yeah. You got to think also, like, are they going to go for an early combo? What is a better card for them to have for 0? Because Philosophy for 0, if they do draw it off of Skull, doesn't make that much difference. I don't know. It was a weird choice.
For sure. I mean, none of the cards really stood out as a huge disruption play, but I guess Alutemu just going for, maybe he thinks that because a Fell Screamer was played, there might be a Moarg in hand, so gonna get rid of the copy effect for Shaxy in case he's in a position where he has to dump a Moarg to get Skull. I don't know. Like, from Alutemu's perspective, like, there might still be a Skull, and he just didn't hit it as one of the options, but I think he has a pretty strong read that it's not there because coin was used so quickly.
Shaxy here, however, though, is just playing Tempo Demon Hunter at the moment, hoping to get there off of the raw force of this 4-mana 4/4. Not going to be doing anything though, as Alutemu's turn, it's just so clean. What more could you ask for? You get the perfect clear leading into your skull, leading into your second skull, and Shaxy has absolutamente nada, nothing to do this game. And unless he picks up skull off the top next turn, it's looking like Alutemu is just going to clutch the 3-0 sweep.
Feels like it, doesn't it? Alutemu with the... I mean, he had that shake of the head. I thought he got something awful, but then he got 1-mana Il'gynoth. I guess it's that wry humor you love to talk about coming through once again. Shaxy at least picks up some draw here. Skull in an awkward timing, though. Oh...
He's got a lot of his 1-mana cards as well. Like, the chances of him being able to just play it next turn in the outcast position are exceedingly low.
One might even say absolutamente nada, I guess.
One might. One might get a lot of Twitter DMs telling him to stop speaking Spanish on cast as well. To which I say, no.
No. Okay, well, Skull again for Alutemu looks, pretty clean here. He can play Eldrazi Warblades at the least.
I grow impatient.
Yep. I agree. Looks very, very simple.
Any reason to start with double jump I don't think so, because these are both natural skulls in his hand, so I don't think there's anything he'd rather get off of double jump right now. I don't know if it's gotten to the point where Alutemu is thinking about what if they discover glide, because that's happened a couple times now in these dumb Demon Hunter mirrors, but I don't think you play around that.
Yeah, I mean, he now has... oh, no, sorry, he's missing a spell damage, a lifesteal spell, sorry. So while he has a quadrillion damage in hand, he does not have any bullets for his cannon at the moment, and so needs to keep digging until he finds either the I-beam or the Fell Screen Blast. But as soon as he does, the game just ends on the spot.
Yeah. Even though Alutemu is so far in the lead, I don't fault him whatsoever for taking extra time with these decisions, because he has been, you know, for the most part, very strong on Demon Hunter, but the times where he has made big mistakes, it's also been on this deck.
That's true. And Illidari Studies picked up. Is that the forbidden glide that we've heard so much about? Alutemu been at the receiving end of a couple times here in GM.
I think that's the out for Shaxy. He knows he's so far behind, and it's not there.
Okay, Stelina, it can disrupt your opponent. If he can find the Il'gynoth, then he at the very least will delay his fate for a couple turns.
Yes. Unfortunately, I don't think Stelina shows you the... Does it show the cost discounted by that point?
I think it does. I'm not 100% certain.
Yeah. The I-beam a while ago that Alutemu saw was costing 1, but the Selena showed it as 3, so I'm not... But then I-beam's not a permanent cost discount, whereas the skull is a permanent discount. I'm not actually sure, but maybe we'll get to find out. Stelina feels like she's the only play this turn.
You're really not playing it? Okay, yes, yeah.
Or... Okay.
Okay. Going for the draw first to try and hit one extra chance. Missing completely, just hitting the philosophy, which... Is that even a necessity here? Alutemu has double on the I-beam here.
Yeah, that's lethal.
Yeah.
Even not counting the swing.
6, 12, 24.
Absolutely. We did get to find out that Selena did show the discounted cost, so if Shaxy saw the Il'gynoth, it was 100% going back. But Alutemu had too many cards in hand for that to be a likely possibility, and he is going to take a very, very clean sweep. Rough series for Shaxy, honestly, and it's the only one he gets to play today because Shaxy entered in the 7th seed, meaning he took an automatic loss. So sad to see him go without really showing the preparation that I'm sure he put in, or not having many chances to at least. But for Alutemu, happy to see that he's moving forward, because it was also kind of a rough 3-0 at the beginning of the day. Forgive please against Alutemu.
That's right, and now Alutemu, I mean, honestly, winning one of the most one-sided series we've seen in a while. Shaxy, I think if I had to be critical, I feel like his overall lineup building was just not there compared to the rest of the field this week. Like, again, we're critical of the players this week for their lack of creativity.